All right. Coming up in March, we've got 3 services again, but they make sense. On March 10th, Michelle will be with us. Palm Sunday is going to have an interesting thing about antiquity. I mean, not antiquity, sorry about antiquity, about authenticity. Our service on Palm Sunday is going to be dealing with authenticity. And those of you in the book club, it'll be a riff off of some of Houston Smith's first couple of pages on Christianity. Easter, on the 31st, we're going to be viewing resurrection from a totally different point of view. Totally different point of view, which we can get away with, and I don't get defrocked. Number 3, text messages. This is a big deal. It is very clear for a long time now, not everybody reads emails. I know you're going, duh. Are you just finding that out now? Not everybody looks at WhatsApp.
He called me
So
yesterday.
The
minister
yes.
just randomly calls me because he's like, Lori never picks up the phone. So
Yeah, we can hear you, Pat. Thank you. That's good. Knock your sister. Good. All right. So anyway, I finally get hold of Grimmy yesterday and Felix, and I say, you know, what we need to do is offer a third option, texting. And I said, are there areas out there you could text people to let people know, you know, what's going on? And they said, of course there are. So Grimmy and Felix are looking at avenues to find how do we do that. So I'll be sending out emails all the time now saying, if you would also like to receive a text, let me know, and we'll put it in a file, and we'll see who wants to receive texts. We will still do. I've got a lot of people who like emails. Believe it or not. I mentioned this, and several people want emails. I said, we're not taking anything away. We're adding. So the ideal thing to do in the 21st century is to do what? You text for those who like text, you emails for those who like emails, and you do WhatsApp for those who like WhatsApp. And the more the merrier. The more times you get it, the better off we are. I hope that makes sense to everybody. We probably should have done this a while ago, but it's better late than never, which seems to be my birth motto. It is better late than never. Okay. Do we have any other questions, any other announcements then before we begin? The memorial candle today is again lit for the continuing death toll in Ukraine, the continuing death toll, by the way, in Africa. There are parts of Africa that are in uproar again. Massive deaths in Congo and up in southern Sudan. And we have the ongoing in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. All of these are continuing, and the amount of innocent people that are dying is just reaching, it is reached a long time ago. Just totally, it makes our species to look, I can't figure enough adjectives to throw in. Keep our memorial candles lit. These are people we don't know personally, but we know them. They are fellow human beings who have been innocent, have deserved nothing of the horror that's been placed on them. Light our candles, if you will, for all the innocents who've perished this last week. May it be so. Our introit this morning is Sanctuary by Weshi Arms. I would invite all of you who wish to read the call to worship with me. It is a lovely way to begin a ceremony, and Donald will pull it up in just a second. And for those of you who would, if we could read together. Here we have come into this sacred space. Quiet her now with our readiness. Hushed voices, hoping, trusting for so many things. For connection, for communion, for inspiration, for information, for healing, for wholeness, for words, for music, for celebration and consolation. Here we have come into this space, bringing all of who we are. Let us be willing. Let us welcome the day. Amen. And for those of you who wish, if you'd say the prayer with me, friends, we are invited to journey through this season of Lent and springtime towards renewal and resurrection. The universe leads us through the cold valleys of fears, doubts, and longings, showing us forgotten beauty along the way. The divine, known by so many names, and none asks but one thing: trust. Amen. And speaking of time, it is Black History Month, and Bobby Vance will share with us now some ideas and thoughts about Black History Month.
Good morning, All Souls. This is toward the end of February, which is the end of Black History Month, and I just wanted to share some thoughts with you for a few minutes. Some of us went to school back in the ancient days, besides Kenneth, when there was no Black History Month. Black History Month was actually established nationally in 1976. So those of us who went to school in the 60s, there was no such thing. I remember that I learned that America was the great melting pot, and everybody came to America, and we were supposed to be put into this big pot, and you stirred it up, and we all kind of came out like Americans. I always had questions about that. And I actually asked my parents, how were we supposed to melt into this pot? Because if we melted into this pot then and stirred it up, everybody would come out brown. And that wasn't America. So I had problems with that. I was pretty well read back in the 60s. My parents had bought a set of encyclopedias from the encyclopedia salesman. And I remember when I moved to Florida, my mother was old. She was about ready to go into the nursing home, and I was helping her with her bills. And this was not too long ago, but I recall that I think she was still writing a check, $2 a month, for the set of encyclopedias that she bought in 1958. But I read those encyclopedias. There was no social media, and I went from A to Z. I would spend a day reading encyclopedias, and I never, ever read anything about Black history. And when people that were more informed would tell me about things about Black history, I simply didn't believe them. I did not believe that Black people in America did, invented, created, and had done these things that they said, because they weren't in the encyclopedias, they weren't in my history books. And if they weren't in the history books, it didn't happen, because I couldn't believe that there was this vast conspiracy. There was a committee of people that went through the history books, and when they saw anything that Black people created, invented, they said, take it out, take it out, take it out. I could not believe there was such a thing. So I spent a lot of years doubting a lot of the accomplishments that were made in Black history. But fast forward, here we are, and we find out the committee more or less did exist. And now with social media and the internet, so many things are being discovered. And I just wanted to say 5 things that make Black History Month important before we have a Black history poem read by a person very shortly. Black History Month is a celebration of contributions. Black people in America are 13% of the population, and you would not believe that if you looked at the cultural and social, political fabric of the United States. You would think the percentage was more 35, 40, because the contributions are really outsized for 13% of the population. Number 2, Black History Month is important because it recognizes the struggles and achievements and the hardships that Black Americans have had to go through history. One of the things that I learned in my study of Black history, that Black people had an opportunity to actually leave slavery join the British Empire and be free. And believe it or not, the majority of Black Americans chose to stay with this country and bet on the promise of America. And that's an amazing thing. Black people gambled that America could live up to the words of the Declaration of Independence. And we've pretty much been betting on that ever since. It's 2024, we're still betting on it. We're still here. Third reason is that for all Americans, for every American, no matter where you're from, this helps educate people about the true history of this country. Because if you understand the true history of this country, then you understand why we're in a lot of the situations that we're in today. If you don't know the history, then anybody can tell you anything, and you could be led by that. Another important thing about Black History Month, and I think that's especially important for a group like All Souls, is that it promotes equality and justice. And everybody here is here because they are interested in equality and justice. And the last thing is that Black History Month provides an opportunity for people of all backgrounds to come together in solidarity and support. So without any further ado, we have a brief Black history poem being read by my better half, Carrie Vance.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Black History cause it's a mystery how I survived the pain from my past. I'm Black History cause I have a story about how I can sing free at last. I'm Black History cause I'm Black and bold with a heart of gold, and I'm Black History cause my integrity and character could never be bought or sold. I'm Black History cause I'm alive today when many of my Black sisters have passed away. I'm Black History cause my family tree consists of those who fought and lived through slavery. I'm Black History cause God's glory shines on me, and my legacy will live throughout centuries. I'm Black History cause my lovely fair complexion represents the many shades of Black skin. I'm Black History cause I'm outwardly beautiful, and within, I'm Black history.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are so, so blessed. Thank you, Carrie and Bobby. Thank you so, so, so much. We are so blessed to have you with us and help us and grow. You really do. Thank you. Thank you. Music by Solomon Burke. None of Us Are Free. And continuing is a reading by Andrea from the Catholic Committee of Appalachia. Andrea, mute.
There it is.
There we go.
Okay, where did it go?
Right in front of you. It's on the screen.
There it is. This is an excerpt from The Telling Takes Us Home, which is one of the pastoral letters from the Catholic Committee of Appalachia in Spencer, West Virginia. The story of the land in Appalachia and its destruction at the hands of industry is a good starting point because the poverty which the land suffers is central to the story of our region. Although some of the most severe of the land's wounds are hidden from sight, away from our cities and the traffic of our interstates. Once we see the truth of these wounds, it is not difficult it is difficult to forget Earth's anguish. And whether we are aware of it or not, the poverty of the land is something all of us, no matter who we are, share in one way or another. In many ways, people in Appalachia are just as alienated from the rest of creation as other people throughout the world. But some Appalachians retain a reverence from the land that lies at the heart of the region's culture. Geologists tell us that the land is home to some of the oldest mountains on Earth. Biologists tell us that these mountains are home to some of the most diverse soil, plant, and animal life on the planet. Countless songs have been written by Appalachian singers which bring images of mountains, trees, flowers, rivers, streams, and animal life into memorable melodies that remind us of home.
It is fascinating to me that Bobby Vance reminds us that we forgot that African Americans had a choice to leave the United States and join the British Empire. I completely forgot that. And here we have geologists tell us that the land in Appalachia is home to some of the oldest mountains on Earth. I must confess, I did not know that. Right here on our own backyard, literally. Our responsive reading, if you'd be kind enough to read the smaller italic in green, and I'll read the larger print in blue. We cry out in grief at everything we witness. People, all living things, the planet. Preventable suffering, yet it continues on and on. When we feel overwhelmed, we gather together to find a new path, a loving way forward. When we feel overwhelmed, we know that all around us are the faces of caring, the hearts of companionship. Joining together, we find our refuge, we find our strength, we find our wisdom. Together, we create the way forward. And again, another reading by Andrea.
This is a piece entitled Sacred Dance. It's excerpted from Into the Fire, Meditations for Lent, Lament, and Letting Go, a Lenten devotional that I wrote a while ago. O sacred child, created from the union of stardust and stellar fragments, of light sparkles and beauty incarnate, you have always been the heart of hearts, the ground of your own being, the cairn of the center of the labyrinth. O sacred child, created from the song and stillness of poetry and motion and sex and magic, of bending gorgeous rainbows of fantasy and imagination. Let us dance the galactic spiral. Let us dance the cosmos. Let us let go, letting you, let us all be. You know, the Milky Way is surprisingly light when you are dancing with God herself. And now I know why you were silent for so long. I would be too if I was always dancing, trying to keep up with one as radiant as her. Selah. So when I started thinking about what I was going to share with y'all, I wrote down a phrase: taking back the spaces left behind. And then I went and spent Christmas with my parents, my daughter, their husband, and my sister at my parents' house in Gallatin, Tennessee. Now, Gallatin, you should know, is about 40 minutes northwest of Nashville, and it sits right on that knife edge where the progressive modern urbanism of Nashville is running smack dab into the face of Tennessee's more recent ultra-conservative backlash. Gallatin has always been a quiet town, which is why it appeals to my parents when they retired. But since COVID, Gallatin has been experiencing a building boom, and not in any of the good ways. My dad, who is a retired United States Army civil engineer, has stories lots of them, about what was left when the tornadoes took the roofs off the newer homes and businesses that they built, of what was left of the hillsides and the mountains when they dynamited them to make way for those houses and businesses. He has stories of what happens to a town so overburdened by new traffic that their only solution was to post traffic cops every half mile on the only highway through town. And all of that has led to this tension, this palpable tension in Gallatin, which is a microcosm of the larger tension in Nashville, itself a microcosm of the larger tension in Tennessee. And it's between those folks that have been there forever and the folks that are fleeing the gentrified and destroyed forever that they've always known. And while there are a lot of Texans in Nashville these days, claiming to have fled the Californians, fleeing the climate change-driven ecological disasters of their own making, there are a lot of Coloradans and New Yorkers and Chicagoans in and around Nashville. They too are chasing dreams, because Nashville isn't just country music anymore, which is also part of that tension. It's the new versus the existing. It's the young versus the old. It's the city versus the country, preservation versus development, grief versus silence. It's government versus poverty, money versus dreams. And it's not new either. I didn't really understand this for what it was until I started work about a year and a half ago on a novel set in Eastern Kentucky, not far from where my old stomping grounds. And it's one of those ideas that erupted out of something that Sean McGuire told me a decade ago. Write the story you want to read. Don't wait for someone else to do it. Now, Shannon is a very wise human, but we'll chat more about that another time. Writing a novel is not unlike catching a train as it speeds by and somehow inexplicably managing to hang on long enough to figure out the route, the manifest, and all the stops along the way, while becoming an expert on all things locomotive. Which explains why I still haven't finished mine. And in this journey of therapeutic novel writing, I have found that I take up more space in the real world. I have found that I don't round my edges as much, that I speak a little more freely about the place that I came from, the place that I call home. That place, if you draw a circle between Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Ashland, and Lexington, those four cities on the eastern side of the Central Appalachians and Kentucky's coal country, they scribe a rough circle. And they'll mark you as someone, if you come from there, they'll mark you as someone who pronounces Louisville with one syllable. It's an identity that'll live in your bones, and it will carry you through the hardest of times. It's a social window, if as it were, revealing how deep the soil of your origin has seeped into your DNA. It's important because when I pull my truck into a service center, that combined smell of gasoline and oil, grease and rubber transports me back to when I was a kid, holding up the transmission of Dad's pickup with my legs while he aligned the clutch, because we could afford to replace the clutch if we did it, but not if we paid someone to do it. And it reminds me of when I was wandering through a junkyard with a new romantic partner, now my spouse, and the rain hit, so we took shelter in a red Dodge van, and how we had the best conversations there. It reminds me of the memories of my high school buddy and the adventures that we had in a succession of questionably maintained Turbo 4 Mustangs. And much like being from Appalachia, I'm reminded that all of my early jobs were blue-collar jobs. HVA service tech, grocery store worker, correctional officer, enlisted Army, radio tech. And even when I worked in IT, making the most money that I had ever made, I still carried a blue-collar ethos in that work because you can't shed it. It's not an ethic you can just get rid of. It embeds itself like the soil of your origin in your DNA. If you make a living with your hands, it changes you. Now, seminary would like us to all believe that once we go through that process, we're all now something else. We're not. We're never far from where we came from. And I've known plenty of ministers and other folks who are white collar, professional class through and through, and they're good folks and ain't nothing wrong with it. It's just a different a way of understanding, just a different way of understanding the thing. So the more that I lean back into this idea of authenticity and the way of navigating the tensions, the more I hear the Midwest and the Chicago inflections in my voice drop away, leaving that Louisville to Nashville Appalachian drawl I used to run from. Now I embrace it. It's authentic, it's real, it's me. So where does that leave us collectively? What do we do with this idea? Authenticity looks different for each of us. And it's up to each of us to discern the truth of who we are as individuals and as a collective. Now, we've got that collective part fairly well settled. We like that Unitarian Universalist tag for the most part, and it fits us, our mission, and who we are in the world. But that journey of us as individuals, that's a little different. Starts with a question of, am I happy with who I am? And ends with, who is the authentic me? I asked myself a lot of hard questions in this journey over the last 20 years, a journey that started with reclaiming an accent lost in a fit of assimilation. Grief has played a role, and I had to grieve things that I never knew were lost, because that is part and parcel of the route to authenticity. Andrew Hall from Manchester United wrote in his song, Silence, you can go anywhere, but you are where you came from. You are where you came from. The choice is who controls who. Being authentic, reclaiming that space left behind, is a way to help fulfill the promise to make the world better than we found it. This, friends, is some of the real practical work of decolonization. In Appalachia, we have a saying, the land remembers, even as the people move on. And when we come back, the land will remind us of our legacy and our debts. And when it demands payment, we pay. The land remembers. Let us remember. Selah.
Andrea mentioned authenticity in mentioning where you come from. Jesus came from a poor town. Wait a minute. Andrea mentioned authenticity and where you come from. And Bobby Vance previewed that with Black History Month. And it's important to remember also, as we have a Jesus meal, that Jesus was not of the mighty Sanhedrin, was not of the wealthy, did not have a prep school education, did not speak with a refined accent. He was a carpenter's son, which means he was handling dirt and wood from the age of 7 or 8 on. It means that if you met him, you'd be shocked because he would be 30 years old, roughly, which meant middle to late middle age. And he did not look pretty. He was a common working man, which meant by having been working with wood all those years, he had all kinds of calluses on his arms and on his hands, and his face would show what it'd be like to have common sand blown at it and sun and bad weather. He would be weathered. He would not be the gorgeous Hollywood stereotype of Jesus who had blonde hair, blue eyes, and God knows what from Northern Europe and Scandinavia. And he did things that kind of speak to what Andrea and Bobby were talking about. He did things that that screamed for authenticity of all people. And when we have a meal, let us also remember this meal is for everybody who wishes. You do not have to be of a certain class. You don't have to be of a certain income. A good number of our members do not have a college education. A good number of our members have different accents, different backgrounds. We come from a multitude of countries in our DNA and a multitude of histories, and this is for everyone. So if you're looking for all saints, this is not it. All of your clergy staff have disabilities. We share in connections all the things that trouble all of us from time to time. And that's what this meal is about. A meal of welcome, a meal of healing, a meal of embracing and saying, bless you, bless you, bless you. And may you have a day of love and joy. And if that's not possible, some support and care. Simple bread from antiquity, meaning we are all part of the earth. A simple, simple cup asking to be shared so no one here is a stranger. And then we say simple words, and I ask you to say them simply with me if you choose. Promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, and sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. Amen. Andrea has us depart with a prayer that she wrote and we'll be using regularly in our services. Andrea, if you lead the parting blessing.
In the beauty and the stillness of this day, which we all keep in our own way, may peace be in your heart, joy in your movements, faith in your breathing, and hope in your presence. Let us all be a wordless prayer of joyful dance and song, hailing the future, hailing creation. Selah.
Amen. Let me say goodbye to all of you before we take off. We've got a surprise visitor, Danny Herrera. Did you see the pictures of Cecilia's kids, by the way, the weekly? Danny Herrera is now in Denmark, an hour outside of Copenhagen with a new job. So we've got Andrea with us this morning, and her wife celebrated a pre-tween antiquity birthday yesterday. We've got Mary Grimmy from Oldsmar, a unique town squished somewhere between Tampa and the rest of the West Coast. It is valiantly holding its own. Nick is with us from near the airport. Pat Sullivan from, Forest Hills. Maureen down in the farmland. Pat can care over here in Miami. Pam is in Forest Hills as well. Pat and Carrie, again, thank you for keeping us ever expanding and knowing what we need to know. Every time you speak, you give us something else to think about, and that is a treasure that is priceless. And thank you. Felix, our new chair, is with us this morning. He's from Miami. Danny Sorkin is up also from Forest Hills. Chris Diaz, our natural polyglot from North Miami. Cindy and Larry from Port Orange. Kay Schweitzer from west of Merritt Island. Danny Hagera in 1 hour west of, I saw it on the map, west of Copenhagen. And Cecilia Alessandro, his mom, who lives here in Miami as well. Blessings to you all. And I want to thank you, Andrea, for reminding us of a part of our American heritage. You and Carrie and Robert really brought home here some things we just needed to hear. And thank you very, very much, the both of you. Thank you. Blessings to you all. Blessings. And we'll be in touch. Remember, I'll be asking you by email, and we'll talk to Nick about this with WhatsApp about texting, about letting you know from texting about how to get hold of people. Peace be with you all soon. We see you again, 3 services in March. Be safe and be well. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrea.